Welcome to the Irish NFL Show, brought to you by QuinnBet. Today is the final day of the transfer window, and good evening to all of you streaming our live reaction show. Welcome also to anyone watching us back or listening to the podcast version of this live deadline day show. We have one certified blockbuster trade as the Colts went all in for Jets cornerback Sauce Gardner, in case you haven't heard yet. We also have a bunch of other big moves to get through as well. We'll stay on top of any break and trade news that might happen while we're on air as we go, and we'll bring you up to speed with everything that's bubbling as the window closes. But let's start, Brian, with that huge move by the Colts, trading 2 first-round picks and a second-round wide receiver pick in A.D. Mitchell to the Jets for Sauce Gardner. We've been talking about him only recently on the show, saying, where has Sauce actually been this season? Not at the same level that we'd seen in his 2 first full seasons in the NFL, where he was an all-pro on both occasions, Pro Bowler last year as well. I mean, still, if you look at the PFF grades, he's the 21st graded cornerback in the NFL. So he's an elite defensive back. We know talent-wise, he's up there with the very best of them. In some people's opinions, in the last couple of seasons, he's maybe the number 1 corner in the league, although he hasn't shown that necessarily this season. The nearest comparison I can think of for this is the Jalen Ramsey trade back in 2019, when the Rams traded 2 first-round picks and a later-round pick to take Ramsey from the Jags to the Rams. He'd fallen out with Doug Marrone at the time. So it's not incomparable in some senses, and that clearly Sauce Gardner has been irked for some time. You do get the impression that he has been kind of sulking a little bit, and that's why he hasn't been at the same level that he's been at. And you kind of wouldn't blame him to a certain extent, given everything that's gone on in Jets land. But that's enough of me talking. What do you make of this trade? Huge statement of intent by the Colts.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher. Pardon the pun, once I scratched my head, but I just want to quickly acknowledge Jer, who's a big Jets fan, and he's got numerous comments in there. We might try and get to some of them, because I think it might have started out as he was reacting to the first one, and then he continued to react to the second deal, and then before he knew it, he was sitting there with three first rounders. Slightly surprised by the nature of the value that the Colts have given away. I would love to know who's calling the shots there in Indy. Is it Chris Ballard, or is it the owner of the Ballard family? You talking about the Rams there going in for Ramsey a couple of years ago. The Rams were well and truly in the race that year. They were like all in. This seems like
7-2. They could be the number 1 seed in the AFC.
They're only 1 game ahead in the division. Connor, we spoke with this today. The Jags are floating on the radar.
We're only halfway through the season. Like, when are you all in? If you're not all in, when you're leading your division, when you're on the inside track for the number 1 seed. If you're not all in now, when are you going to be all in?
They're all in a team that don't have a quarterback in this year, Connor. Yeah, they don't contract for their quarterback. He's on a 1-year deal. Matthew Stafford was solidified in LA with the Rams when that deal took place. What happens next year if it doesn't go, if they don't get to ultimately the biggest prize of all and make them way to Santa Clara? They've got.
You start again. Would you rather be the Green Bay Packers and just make the championship game and lose every year?
The value of the deal shocked me. 2 first rounders, and to give away A.D. Mitchell, which okay, I think we probably do know why A.D. Mitchell has been removed of his services in Indianapolis, because a lot of it's down to, if you look at social media in the last hour, we've already been goading it ourselves.
The moment A.D. Mitchell became a Jet, when he dropped the ball going in for the touchdown.
Dropped the ball.
The Jets a break. Like, look, they have the draft capital now. The other side of this trade is the Jets have the draft capital to absolutely rebuild from the studs up, and they could do really exciting things if they make the right moves.
Yeah, sorry, we're recapping initially on what we believe the Colts, why the Colts have made this move. I think for the Jets, it's a fantastic move. Like Sauce Gardner, you touched on it there, came into the league, a lot of accolades when he joined the league. He was lights out initially with that big game in Green Bay where he walked off, all the Jets fans cheering. But I don't think any Jets fan out there would genuinely say over the course of the last 18 months, this season and last season, that he was playing at a level which would reward a team with 2 first-round picks, and the contract that they gave him as well. They probably looked at that in hindsight and said, you know what, the enormity of that is too big for us in the long term, or where we're trying to achieve. And look, they've cashed out essentially on him. They've cashed out on Williams as well later on in the hour. And they even tried to cash out on a few other players, but it looks a bit, judging by what's been put out on social media over the course of the last hour. Jets, and Jeremy, they're not going to go to playoffs this year, but they could win a few games. Like, it's not a game. This isn't a team that's going to win 1 or 2 games for the course of the season. They're playing the Browns or something. A huge chance to get more wins.
Am I being mad at seeing this as in some way also a ballot on Aaron Glenn as head coach? I mean, you're getting rid of his best players. You clearly don't buy the Aaron Glenn revolution or this phase of it.
I look at it differently. I think this is Aaron Glenn coming in and being like, well, listen, if I'm going to build a culture, I need to have my own guys here. Because let's face it, I mean, we talk about Sauce Gardner as being somebody who hasn't necessarily played it to the standard we know he has, but especially considering he got a 4-year contract extension this June. This contract extension came this year with all that money that the Jets put up front. And even it was funny listening to the Jets owner Woody Johnson talking last week when he was in that famous conference. We started talking down Justin Fields. It was like, well, listen, it was great we got the Sauce Gardner deal done. That's very important for us. He seemed to definitely put a lot of faith in that. So I think this to me is an Aaron Glenn situation where he's looking at defense, and as well as that, turning around to his guys and being like, listen, I have no problem getting rid of any of you guys. I'll trade you, I'll cut you. Are you going to show up and give me the best of what you can? Because we look at that PFF grades you were talking about earlier. He's like, Sauce Gardner's the 21st of 105 cornerbacks in the league. That's, it's good. It's not 2 first-round picks. Trade level.
No, you're acquiring him as a top 5 talent. But that's the value of the deal. So you're overvaluing him based on his performance. But it's a longer term thing, I guess. That's the price of a lockdown corner, an elite corner, like the premium positions: edge rusher, cornerback, quarterback, wide receiver. That's the right haul. If he does turn out to be Jalen Ramsey, the Jets have absolutely fleeced you if he's not.
Yeah, and look, we'll talk about the Colts in a second and the fact that they seem to go into win now mode. But from the Jets' point of view, they're looking at what they have here and say, listen, if we need to rebuild, we need to try and rebuild fast. They've got, like, in today's, in 24 hours, they've gotten themselves 3 first-round draft picks on top of what they already have. The draft pick that they got for Quinnen Williams, by the way, is the best of the two.
I know I was exaggerating, and I was slightly trolling you earlier, Brian, saying that the Colts are right to be all in, but like there is a view right now. If you look at the AFC and you say down year for the Ravens, who may not actually make the playoffs, down year for the Chiefs, who are chasing the top of the AFC West, the Colts are actually sitting quite pretty here, and maybe it is time not to push all the chips into the center of the table, but to be aggressive, because you might not get a chance this good again.
Yeah, no, that's a fair statement, and I think we're going to see this Sunday.
And you've no Joe Burrow either. Like it's all lining up for somebody to make a run in the AFC. It doesn't have to be the Chiefs again.
No, were they that need of a cornerback? Like, bearing in mind what we said, bearing in mind they're 7-2. Bearing in mind you look at the schedule. Okay, they've got some tough games coming up. Germany on Sunday. A bit of German sauce now for Shane and Ben to enjoy when they're over there on Sunday, and then the following week. The following week, they're on the road in Arrowhead. Okay, so if they split those games, we'd argue the Chiefs will likely be favourites going into that game. They're 5.5-point favourites going into this game Sunday. But you look at the team and you look how well they played defensively over the course of the season. And we even spoke about the fact that their defensive coordinator was probably something in the hindsight the Bengals will regret letting go, bearing in mind the nature of their defense. Were they really in need of a cornerback to go out and put them over the top, shall we say? It doesn't. And for the value,
the argument there is you're always in need if you can land one of the best players in that position in the NFL. Like you can never have too many edge rushers, you can never have too many lockdown corners, you can never have too many wide receivers, and you don't if you don't have the right quarterback, you got to go all in to get the right quarterbacks. Like I think there's an argument to be made. I think the valuation, time will tell. Obviously, if he plays up to the talent and if he plays up to what he showed in his first couple of seasons, he's worth that, provided, to your point, that they are actually able to win with him and go to where they want to go. I think you've got to be aggressive when a player of that potential becomes available. No more than, say, the Eagles were when they went for AJ Brown. Like, it's not like they had a poor wide receiver room at that time, but you just you literally can't put a price on these guys. There's only so many of them to go around. There's never going to be enough.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, just in terms of what the Colts are getting with Sauce Gardner, there's one area that they needed to improve on is their pass defense. Their pass offense and the run offense have been pretty solid. Their run defense has been one of the better in the league. It's their pass defense where things get a little streaky. We saw that actually this week when Aaron Rodgers was given a bit more room to pass, and his wide receivers are given a bit more room than they have been accustomed to over the course of the years. I know turnovers played a big part in that game as well. So if you were going to go all out in one position, cornerback was the position to do it. If you are the Indianapolis Colts, I understand now. Obviously, you've laid it out very well, Connor, in terms of the opportunity that sits in front of them. I would still just question the nature of the draft capital of giving up 2 first-round picks. Obviously means that you don't see your future as needing a quarterback ever again. This is it. You are locked in with trying to build with what you have. with Daniel Jones, or that you at least don't see any other need to try and use up a first rounder on offensive line, running back, defensive end. It's a significant chunk of capital to build up. Time will tell in terms of how well this game would pay off. But like you were saying, the Chiefs being a game that they're coming up against is going to be very, very big in terms of the AFC conversation. What they need for that game is a playmaker, not a scheme, not the offense. They need somebody to make a play and to try and shut down all the wide talents we know that Kansas City can bring. And maybe Sauce Gardner to just fit the profile as to what they wanted. It's interesting as well. I'll be interested to see how he fits into that defense, because maybe Sauce Gardner didn't necessarily fit into the scheme that Aaron Glenn was trying to put forward, a comparison to what was being done previously with Robert Saleh. Maybe he might suit better what's being done in Indianapolis.
I mean, look, devil's advocate aside, sorry, Brian, but being devil's advocate aside, like, I don't think the Colts are as far along in the development curve, to your point, Brian, where this move is an absolute slam dunk. I do think this is a quirky enough season, and I do think there's an argument to be made that you could be you could be playing a championship game because you managed to come through the pack here in a really weird year. The Patriots are in the same mode. We were talking about, the stretch objective for the Patriots this year would be make the playoffs, but like that's no longer sufficient for the Patriots' ambitions. And let's see what they do on deadline day and whether they're able to land any talent, because right now, like the Colts, they're sitting pretty and they're looking at, the same vista, saying there's no Joe Burrow, there's no the Chiefs aren't quite in the position that they would have hoped to be in. Like, there's a number one seed to be played for, a first round bye in the playoffs to be played for, and you could find yourself a step or a year or two ahead of where you actually thought you might be. We talked about it all those years ago when the Bengals made the Super Bowl, saying there's no guarantee they're going to be back here. Everybody's saying, the window for Joe Burrow and how many Super Bowls could he get back to? Well, the answer is maybe none. You just don't know what the future holds. We saw that one play out. So I don't mind GMs and owners being aggressive where they think they have the chink of light. They're not in the same situation that the Rams were, and that is a flawed comparison, and I absolutely admit that. But I do admire the chutzpah. I do admire that they are pushing those chips into the center of the table. The other aspect of the Jets trade, we've kind of mentioned them without mentioning them, is they've also let go of their defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, one of the better players in that position, and a player that, unlike Sauce Gardner, was actually being talked about very much as being potentially on the trading block. He goes to the Cowboys, which kind of makes sense, but also kind of doesn't make sense. The Cowboys seem to have expended all this capital to get in, and they took in Logan Wilson as well from the Bengals. It's like, how many players do you want to add to replace Micah Parsons? Could you not just have held on to Micah Parsons?
It's the Moneyball approach. You got to build them in the aggregate,
I think Jerry has succumbed to the pressure and probably the realization that he made a serious mistake in trading Micah Parsons, and their team has been gashed up front over the course of the season. And when they brought in Clark from the Packers, I don't know if he had this different mindset. He'll stop the gap for a period of time, but they can't stop the run. And you could argue Williams is one of the better defensive players in the league that would, go up there and help them in that situation. But their season, I wouldn't say their season is over, but they're going to have a real hard stretch to make the playoffs, having come off a really difficult loss on Monday Night Football, which I didn't expect. I thought they would find a way to win that one. And you touched on there. I mean, they've done a deal to move on from Micah Parsons, and I wouldn't say that necessarily handing over that first round pick again, but of course it does feel like we're only a couple of months on from there, and here we are back again.
They're like me playing Football Manager. Oh, I know this guy's name. I'll trade for him. And then you're like, oh, wait, no, he's not actually that good. Like, Logan Wilson was benched by the Bengals, and the Cowboys are like, oh, let me have some Logan Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's a stockpiling, isn't it? That's just like they are banged up in the secondary and safety positions. Let's just find another player to come in. The Williams one, it is it. Look, let's be fair. We're factoring it into Micah Parsons, but from a Cowboys perspective, it probably is one of the better. It's a good deal. It's a good deal for everybody, because obviously the Jets are looking at this, and you see the list of selections in which we have. We're talking about the Colts and the Cowboys. We haven't really even factored in this Jets rebuild now. Essentially, is in full throttle.
The Jets could have the number one overall pick in the draft. They're obviously in pole position for that, and they'll have a second first round selection, and they'll have 2 first round selections in 2026, and there'll be decent selections as well, I think, because they've gotten. It wasn't the Cowboys. The Cowboys didn't trade the first round pick that they got from the Packers for Parsons. They traded their own first round pick, which clearly was a clever piece of business by the Jets. No, I won't have that Packers one. That'll be like a bottom of the round. Thanks very much. We'll have the Cowboys pick, which will be probably at worst mid round, if not top half. So it's a huge amount of draft capital, and they should be able to rebuild with competence. Obviously a term one uses advisedly when one applies it to the New York Jets with competent front office decision making.
Same one thing before you come in. Not that I want to wish this season away, but at least you know exactly what we're going to be talking about come this off season, because it's all going to be about the Jets and lead up to the draft.
Don't start with the draft talk now. I've already told the rest of the lads, but they're cracked it is too early.
I can talk about draft talk. You can't.
Just point it briefly.
Go on.
My back, my gun. The one thing I will just point to briefly is for anybody who didn't see, just the list of draft capital that the Jets have. They now have 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks in 2026, and 3 first-round picks now in 2027. And I think that Dallas first-round pick, one of them, they will get the better of the 2 that Dallas have, because Dallas have their own and Green Bay. They will get whichever one is actually higher up the list. So even the Jets have managed to get the advantage in that aspect of things as well. So huge amount of draft capital. They better get it right, though. The pressure is on.
Yeah, I see some of the comments coming in there, and you flash one up on the screen, Brian, from Jerry saying, like, that is a really good return for Sauce. 2 firsts and a wide receiver, which is a position of need for the team. Like, what they've done in loading up the capital is the right move. Obviously, it's how they expand it is how they'll be judged. Let's move on to Rashid Shaheed, who generated one of my favorite comments. Like, I'm a sucker for a movie reference. I love a good Top Gun quote. Our own Ben saying, I have the need for Shaheed. I feel the need for Shaheed. Rashid is on his way from the Saints to the Seahawks. I love this for both teams. Like, he's a luxury for the Saints right now, and he makes that Seahawks unit, and we already talked about them at length in our reaction show on Monday for what they did to the Commanders and what they've been doing this season. They're in a really good spot, and you want to make moves when you're in a position of strength. Again, you want to be aggressive when the sun is shining on you. And another weapon for Sam Darnold, who hasn't exactly looked like he's gun shy or like he's shy of targets. Well, why wouldn't you take a top tier wide receiver again when one becomes available? You don't know what's going to happen down the stretch. You don't know when you're going to need injury cover. You've already got Cooper Kupp, and you got Jackson Smith and Jigba. You got the tight ends showing up for you. You got a 2-headed backfield. Rashid Shaheed adds a real take the top off X receiver X factor to that offense.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about teams that are in win now mode. I think Seattle is starting to slowly drift into that category as well. And they know they have to try and find a way to outpace a 49ers team who, even with their injuries, have weapons, and a Rams team that we know are just going to be supreme throughout the rest of the year. I like this move a lot for both teams, in particular for Seattle. You look at Shaheed's stats and everything, and that obviously comes with the sort of asterisk points that he is a wide receiver playing in a New Orleans side where he's had Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shough playing at quarterback, and they haven't necessarily been able to get it go. Imagine what he's able to do now with Sam Darnold. As well as we talk about the talent that Seattle already have, they are too reliant on Jackson Smith and Jigba. Jackson Smith and Jigba is incredible. We were talking earlier, we were talking already about the fact that he seems to have stepped up when DK Metcalf left that building, but you're asking for trouble if you're relying so much on one talent to do so much of the hard work. And I think they recognize that in Seattle by bringing in G. What's nice about him as well is just he has there is a kind of nice movement about him. You see sometimes when he's playing for New Orleans, I think quite a bit of what the wide receivers can do in Seattle is it involves a bit of misdirection as well, kind of mid-route. He does that quite nicely as well. So I think this is a pretty sweet move. And obviously the Saints, they need to start building up capital and look towards the future. There's no point in keeping Shaheed in for no reason.
And I can remember, Brian will probably look ruefully at this one. I mean, there was a game against the Saints, the one that the Giants lost, and you're like, literally the only thing you have to watch for is the go ball to Shaheed, and they were able to pull it off and get the win. Another one that you'll
85 yards, Connor.
Yeah.
85 yards.
You're a man, the defensive coordinator, Bowen. That's another nail in his coffin, I feel, or that was one of the more significant ones along that journey. But what we said about the Colts, I would also apply to the Seahawks, although I think the Seahawks are further along their journey to being all in than the Colts are. They're looking at the NFC and they're going, yeah, not sure the Eagles are necessarily in the place they were last year. Lions aren't quite the team that we expected. Packers, we thought, would be the major threat in the AFC post that Parsons move, and they've been a little bit up and down. We'll see how they go down the stretch. Again, that NFC looking more open than you might have thought it would be. So why wouldn't the Seahawks push some chips into the table, especially when, as Shane has outlined, within their own division, the 49ers still in the injury depleted and having to keep the show on the road there. And the Rams probably underperforming too.
Yeah, and what's interesting, just very quickly on that, This week they play the Cardinals. In 2 weeks' time, they have to go to Los Angeles to play the Rams. It was probably the most important game of the season. So this is a nice statement of intent from them out of that. I think it's a good move.
And it's a fourth and a fifth, Connor. Like, with all due respect, it's a flyer, isn't it? And he is a flyer, obviously, pardon the pun, but like as you said, he can take the top off of defense. But if it doesn't work out, they're not going to be ruining it too much because like they haven't given away huge draft capital. It makes sense, absolutely makes sense. Again, as you touched on there, it's a team that right now, and we spoke about it last night on our week 9 recap show around the fact that they're really well and truly in the race now. It's not just about the Rams and the 49ers pulling out these victories, the Seahawks, and it's the nature of how the Seahawks playing. Right now, you wouldn't argue they're the best team in the division in terms of how they're playing. So
I like this because you can only play what's in front of you. You firstly need to get out of your division to make a mark, and they're positioned to do that. So it is time to be more aggressive, and they do need to shift gears, and they have done just that. I do like that move. Another wide receiver move to mention is Jakobi Meyers gone from the Raiders to the Jags. Jags obviously with that injury to Travis Hunter looking a little bit light in the wide receiver room. You know, Brian Thomas Jr., it seems kind of crazy based on where he was last year, but has been talked about as a trade target himself. It's just not fitting for him for whatever reason in Jacksonville right now. Don't think they are going to let him go. They did need to add to that wide receiver room. Jakobi Meyers is one of those guys that everybody says is underrated, but you know, now that he's in that position with a team with a winning record that's very much in the mix for the playoffs, he'll see this as a big opportunity, and the Jags clearly have faith in him to deliver in ways that he's threatened to for some time now.
Yeah, there's also, like you're talking about Brian Thomas Jr. being potentially traded. We're done now, right? We've passed the deadlines. There's no more deals really realistically to come down the line. But he's been injured, and on Sunday, I don't know for anyone who watched that game, he rolled over on his ankle after a big play, in fact, in the second half. So there's question marks whether he's going to play on Sunday. So they've been light. They've been light when he's been out. He's very efficient when they can get him going. But
I'm a big fan of his. You know, haven't seen him in the flesh last year in London when the Bears played the Jags, and Jags were in a heap that year, and they were really poor in that game. But he was absolutely electric every time he got the ball. He was the one bright spot in that Jags offense, and looked like a guy that you thought would be even better in year two. For some reason, it hasn't quite happened. But I'd be a big believer in his talent. I think they'd be crazy to let him go.
Yeah, and it's coming back to the offline conversation me and you were having this morning about the Jags. Like there was very little kind of touched on about the fact they beat the Raiders on Sunday. They're only one game out of fourth place in the division, and we're lauding them up to the Colts. But like things can change very quickly. They've got the Texans on Sunday. It feels like they're light in the wide receiver room. I think they got to give Trevor Lawrence more players to play with. He's a reliable source. For the Raiders, like kind of signifies what we thought of the Raiders, which is they're only going one way, which essentially is a bit of a rebuild as well. So there's even suggestions Max Crosby was in the frame for some moves to see him.
Yeah, and links to just about every team, but obviously that didn't happen. Shane, from a Raiders perspective, again, clearly they're in rebuild mode. They brought in Pete Carroll, and maybe the thought was initially, well, they were going to have a pop at it, but now it does seem like they have medium to longer term plans, and clearly they have to, because this season they've been probably pound for pound one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, their record doesn't say that they're the worst team in the league, but based on the talent that they do have, and they're not completely bereft of talent, even after letting Jakobi Meyers go, it's just nowhere near good enough.
Yeah, and I think that they had motivation to try and make this trade happen, because otherwise they kind of risk losing them to sort of just a compensatory pick at the end. Whereas now that they're really trying to build draft or sort of a cap space going into the next couple of years, I think at the moment they're projected to have over $100 million to spend next year. So I think this is part of it. You're talking about Jakobi Meyers being somebody who's underrated. I think he's rated, and I think with the way we've seen him play is pretty much how he plays. I don't think he's, I think he has the potential to be a lot better.
I think that is a beautiful way to put it, and a tip of the cap to you, because like when everybody says a player is underrated, yeah, to your point, I start thinking, no, I think he's probably about accurately rated.
Connor, Shane's just born because he's the one that threw the ball across to the Raiders player who ran in the touchdown. And not fair to say, yeah. He's still born from that play.
I wasn't even thinking of that consciously, at least. But in terms of this, the output you get from him, again, like I think he very much needs the scheme to suit him. I don't think he necessarily changes to suit the scheme. So it'll be interesting to see how Liam Cohen uses him. Maybe it's a match made in heaven, considering that they probably need a bit of that. And a 4th and a 6th round pick is probably a worthwhile gamble, considering where the Jags are in the season this year. But I'm not looking at this as being a game changer for Jacksonville's season.
Yeah, one final move, and again, to your point, Shane, on Jacoby Myers, I don't think this one is a game changer for either team either. Defensive end Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has been traded from the Browns to the Bears. Bears needed defensive line help. Season-ending injury to Dayoda Yingbo there is probably what's motivated this one. Bears have one of the least impressive front fours in football right now. Their pass rush win rate has been one of the lowest in the league, and they've been relying on turnovers, relying on a very strong secondary to keep them in games and to take the ball away, and they lead the league in takeaways, but not getting enough pressure up front. So that's a move by the Bears there to shore up the defensive line and make up for the absence of Odeyingo. Tryon-Shoyinka is a former first-round pick. He initially went to the Bucks. Hasn't really made a huge impact in Cleveland, but I guess it's a bit of a flyer, to use your language, Brian. It's a late-round pick swap, not a huge amount of capital to give up, and if it works, it works.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears are just fine. You talked about the struggles. Like, as much as Bears fans were excited about it, for the man eviction or something, there is, you touched on it last night, there is still some positions of need. So it kind of makes sense that teams who look to kind of push on now and try and make a playoff spot will try to secure additional players. Even a later one that came in there, Trevor Penning, Saints offensive line, gone to the Chargers. Obviously, Joe Walter's gone for the season, so it makes sense. And again, this is teams that are, they're thereabouts. They know they're in the sweepstakes to make the playoffs. They've got to find players that can, not necessarily stockpiling position, but just have a little bit more to solidify and put players in the game when they need it.
I mean, all told, looking at this transfer deadline as it's gone, the Sauce Gardner trade is a blockbuster move, right? And it's the kind of sexy, juicy, saucy trade that you look at and you go, wow, like that set us all aflutter. But overall, it's interesting, the players who haven't been moved on based on the pre-deadline speculation. Trey Hendrickson's still where he was. Jeffrey Simmons still where he was. Yeah, Quinnen Williams was one that we would have predicted, and he's gone. There's a lot of players who, Max Crosby, another one, as you mentioned, Brian, who probably will be in the mix in the off season, but who haven't moved now. And some teams clearly very happy with where they are and not willing to commit what it would have taken to bring one of those marquee names. So it's as you were for a lot of the powers. Obviously, Jalen Phillips was a move that the Eagles made yesterday. They took him in from the Dolphins. Another, it seems, quite smart Howie Roseman move. They haven't given up a lot. Third-round pick to get Jalen Phillips in, who is one of the better edge rushers who would have been available if you weren't going to be able to get a Trey Hendrickson or a Jeffrey Simmons, who clearly weren't on the block.
Yeah, it was the later third-round pick as well that the Eagles have. So essentially, it's a rent a player, essentially, see if he can prove himself over the remainder of the season. But you're talking about really realistically a fourth-round pick, Connor. So it's a no-brainer for a team that are up there and challenging. Some of the reports in the last half hour was that the Dolphins stood firm in terms of Jalen Waddle. They wanted a first-round pick. The Broncos were very keen to try and make a deal happen, and but they weren't willing to budge on a first-round pick. And you could argue you can't. There's only so much you're willing to do. Jalen Waddle for first, it's probably work now, but in the long term, probably not the right thing to do. And for the Dolphins, like, what message are you sending out to the fan base in Miami? I know you can argue the Jets have done the same, but the Jets have obviously been a bit more calculated about what they can get back and measured. But first round pick for Jalen Waddle, I think that was too steep for many a team.
Yeah, I mean, selfishly, since you and I, Brian, are heading over to Madrid to see the Dolphins play against the Commanders, I'm glad that they still at least have some talent and something worthy of our attention. Not that we wouldn't be having a great time in the first ever NFL game in Spain and the first game in the Bernabeu. It's going to be very exciting one way or the other, but I'm glad we'll get to see Jalen Waddle in the flesh. You'll get to see us in the flesh on Thursday with our TNF preview and indeed our live picks and predictions show at 9 o'clock on Thursday evening on the Irish NFL Show.